there are some people who say, I don't have an issue. I don't have any gut issues. Okay. How's your brain fog? How's your fatigue? How's your skin? How's your hair? I know people that have had their hair fall out. They have no other health issues, but they start going bald. They go gluten-free and their hair is fine. I know people that have zero stomach issues. They just have fatigue and brain fog. They cut gluten and they feel way better. Hey there, welcome to the Female Health Solution podcast, where we discuss women's health, hormones, and everything else in between. Join me as we dive into the tools that you need to live your healthiest life. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to the Female Health Solution podcast. I am your host, Dr. Beth Westy. Today, we're going to talk about gluten. And I'm going to share more about my personal history and story with gluten, and some important things to realize about gluten in general. This has been a hot topic. I'm using air quotes with that because for some people, they still have really strong feelings about gluten in one way or another, which makes it a hot button topic for them. And these opinions that people have, everybody has the right to their own opinion, but that doesn't make it a fact for you. Let's just put it as that. So yeah. So I'm going to talk about this a lot, and in terms of some, just some information for you to take it or leave it. And then also talk about clinical experiences as well as personal experience, right? The benefit of sharing personal stories about certain topics like this is that it allows you to make up your own mind, try your own discernment, make your own decisions on things, right? No one else lives in your body but you. No one else experiences what it's like to feel your gut bloat 5 minutes after you eat something. But you, no one else knows what that's like. The only thing you can do is try to accurately describe what's going on. But the tricky thing, especially when we're trying to identify a food sensitivity or an issue with a food or something like that, is we eat multiple times a day, a variety of things. And certain ingredients in foods like gluten can be hidden in foods that you wouldn't think it's in. So we're going to talk about all that. First off, what is gluten? Gluten is a binding protein found in wheat, barley, and rye. Only those three things: wheat, barley, rye. Now, there are other foods that they say, may contain gluten or something like that. If you look at a label, that's because they're produced in a facility that also produces wheat products or gluten products, and therefore the cross-contamination is real. Oats, for example, are a great, thing to look at, because oats by themselves do not contain gluten. You plant a seed, it grows the oats, right? And the oat by itself does not have gluten. That is gluten-free. However, all the way from the farm, from harvesting that oat to the oat ending up in your kitchen, there are processes that happen and different things that oat touches and is exposed to that could have gluten on it. For example, does the farmer that farms the oat also farm wheat or barley or rye that uses the same equipment and does not essentially sterilize the equipment before, harvesting a different crop? Is the oat grown too close to another crop and harvested and then put in a package that says, this is oats, it's just oats? Okay, yeah, it's oats, but is it cross-contaminated? The facility that the oats get shipped to, does that facility also produce other things, right? If you've ever toured a facility that produces any type of food, and if you're like, who would do that? I would, of course. But here's the thing. So my husband grew up in Vermont, right? And Ben and Jerry's, huge thing there. Huge. You can go visit that, which I suggest you do. It's super fun. And they give you free samples of ice cream at the end of the tour. They have a Ben and Jerry's plant where you can tour and see and walk around, and you see how they make the ice cream. They do clean the equipment in between producing different flavors, because they produce different flavors, at different times. But that doesn't mean that it is cleaned well enough that it would not contaminate gluten or contain gluten potentially, right? You can't, and what is the risk there? When we talk about cross contamination with stuff, you also have to be very careful about even your own kitchen or other people's kitchens, eating at, someone invites you for dinner and they're not gluten free. Do they use wooden cutting boards? Do they use wooden spoons where gluten can get in the crevices of those materials? Right? Do they know about cross contamination? When we moved several years ago, before we moved anything in the house, I actually we didn't like move in on the first day, we got the keys to the new house. Did we move in right away? No. One of the first things I did was I went through and sterilized the kitchen. And if you're thinking that sounds crazy, I know it sounds crazy unless you have had the tummy issues that I have had with the gluten. um so you have to be really careful, meaning I vacuumed and cleaned out every single cabinet, cupboard, oven, anything that would touch food. So the forks in the drawer and the plates and the cooking utensils and the pans for baking and all that stuff. I thoroughly cleaned everything just so there was no chance for cross contamination. Took a really long time. So yeah, gluten is just this binding protein. It makes cooking and baking and stuff with wheat flour. I'm going to talk about wheat or flour most often. That's what people typically eat here in the US. It makes it really forgiving. If you're going to bake bread, make anything, bake anything, you can throw some wheat flour in there and it's really pliable. And I say forgiving, meaning you can knead it or whatever, and it will still rise. You can over knead something a little bit and it'll still rise. It still has typically a good response to it. If you're baking with rice flour, potato flour, cassava flour, tapioca flour, right? All these other almond flour, they don't have that same binding protein naturally within it. So you have to add something in, xanthan gum, and other things, an additive to it to help it bind and everything else. And it's not quite the same, right? The texture still isn't quite the same as wheat bread. Wheat bread can be very spongy, very light, all that stuff. Whereas everybody jokes about the gluten-free stuff is like cardboard. Yeah, kind of. They're my favorite brand, in case you're wondering, and I'm not sponsored by this company at all. They don't know who I am, I guarantee. I just buy a lot of their stuff, is Canyon Bakehouse. Their bread, their bagels, really, really good. Um, yeah, yeah. So, and there's a lot of gluten-free products that are on the market now. We get gluten-free chicken nuggets for the kids at Costco. Really easy, right? There's gluten-free pizza everywhere now. So it's very different now to be gluten-free than it used to be. So, how I discovered being gluten-free and why this has been so important and why I talk about this so much is that it's something that, again, I encourage you to just try it. I encourage you to just, if you have had stomach issues or if you've not felt well or if you've wondered about, I wonder if gluten-free could be right for me, just try it. Right? Just try it. It's not harmful to not have gluten. And that's one of the biggest myths that has ever come across, that if someone says, "Oh, if you don't eat wheat, you're missing out on essential vitamins and minerals and nutrients and stuff." And I'm like, that's not true at all. You can get all of those nutrients from something else, right? That, yeah, yeah, not true. So, in speaking about gluten and understanding what it does, it is also one of the most inflammatory foods for the human body. So, this is one of the reasons I would recommend someone to go gluten free for a period of time. Try it for a week, a month, see how you feel. And everybody is different. Everybody is different. And what your body is going through right now might be different than what it went through, last year or 10 years ago. You might respond differently now. If you say, "Oh, I tried it before and it didn't do anything." Okay, well, maybe your inflammatory levels are different now and maybe it would do something different now, right? The hardest thing is that it's just a pain in the butt to figure out if you're not used to it. That's about it. But there's a ton of cookbooks and recipe books and blogs and all those things that are really dedicated to being gluten free and how helpful that is. But and then again, there's the whole aspect of, oh, I can't eat gluten in the US, but I traveled to Europe and I ate gluten and my stomach was just fine. I know so many people who say that. And it's, the structure, what's sprayed on the plant and stuff here versus there is very different. So your stomach can be reacting to that. Yes. Um, we're not going to get into that right now. I wanted to talk just about more of the like making sure you're aware of the cross contaminations. It can be found not just in breads, pastas, cereals, things like that, but it's also found in sauces, marinades, beverages, spices and seasonings, soup. That was one of the first surprising things when I went gluten free that I cleaned out the pantry and I had to look at every single thing in the pantry just to make sure it didn't have wheat in it or gluten in it because this was before they put labels and they labeled contains, wheat or contains whatever on the bottom of the, ingredient label. Because wheat can be found and it can be named different things like modified food starch. Do they mean corn or do they mean wheat? Is that modified food starch derivative from corn or wheat? It makes a difference for some people. So they now put that label on the bottom, but they didn't used to. So I used to have to go through everything. I had to go through everything. And if there was a question, I just got rid of it and donated it to the food pantry. Yeah. So how I started being gluten free. So I'm going to talk about this and then what got me started, how it changed things for me. And again, why I recommend it. And then some of the craziest things that people have said to me about being gluten free. Because you have no idea how many people's feelings get hurt by me being gluten free. I didn't know either. And I'm, again, saying this because if you are going to start something like this, if you're going to go gluten free, this is not, oh, I'm going to try it for a little bit. This is not people who are like, yeah, I'm sort of vegetarian, but I still eat bacon or something. No. If you're going to do it, you have to do it all the way 100% because even a little bit of gluten will ruin any impact that you're trying to test for yourself in being gluten free. It's all or nothing, right? Because you're looking at contaminating everything, right? It's either you're eating it or you're not eating it. So if you're not eating it, you really have to be cautious about it. So I went gluten free. I had really bad stomach issues. I specifically remember through college, high school and college. I remember sometimes like walking out of practice. I was a sport athlete in high school, and I would walk out of practice, walk to my car in the parking lot, and my stomach would be so bloated and hard. Like it would be hard to touch. It would hurt so bad. And I would always go to bed and wake up the next morning and my stomach would be flat. It wouldn't be bloated like that, but it would happen at the end of the day all the time. I had gas. I had different bouts of like constipation, diarrhea, kind of on and off, and just different things. Didn't realize it, right? Didn't realize that that wasn't normal. My stomach hurt a lot, but I was sort of used to that. Also, at the same time, because I went through growth spurts and I was an athlete, I ate ibuprofen like it was candy. I ate Advil like it was candy. I didn't know what I didn't know. And any of the doctors I went to when I was like, yeah, my knees hurt, my legs hurt, because I had growing pains. I still have an Osgood-Schlatters bump on my left knee from it. And I had so many growth issues and then sports injuries and things like that. They were like, oh, yeah, it's totally fine. Take 4 ibuprofen every 4 hours. I did that for years. And that's not an exaggeration. I did that for years. So I didn't really realize how much pain my stomach was in sometimes because I was just popping ibuprofen, and especially when I was playing in games or tournaments or things like that, or I had practice. Who cares if my stomach hurts? I got to get out there and practice, right? I have to be on the court. So my stomach was really unhappy for a really long time, and it got slowly worse as I got older. I also had teeth issues. I had cavities all the time. I brushed my teeth 2-3 times a day. I would floss. I would use mouthwash, all this stuff. And I still had cavities. And of course, the dentist would just say, "Oh, stop eating so much candy." And I'm like, I don't eat candy. I mean, I went through phases, as an athlete where we would do restrictive dieting. There was, restrictions on what we could and could not eat on different sports teams and things like that. And this is not to call out a specific coach or anything like that that set these rules. This was part of the trend. I was not the only athlete that had this, right? Having coaches say, you cannot eat cheese or butter or fat or whatever. You cannot eat candy or sugar or whatever. And we would do it. So I'd be like, yeah, I'm not eating sugar right now at all. I'm eating zero candy. And I would still have cavities. I was anemic. My hemoglobin was always really low, a 9, sometimes an 8. I got turned away from donating blood because my iron levels were not good enough. In my and they were like, "Oh, make sure you're eating red meat." And I'm like, "I eat red meat like all the time." And I'm sure people are like, "Yeah, yeah, sure, sure, kid. You don't know what you're talking about." But I would like every day, every other day. That's what we ate because I grew up, on a goat farm. So we ate fruits and veggies and stuff all the time. So I had these kind of underlying issues. And I also remember I was sick a lot as a kid. I had mono twice. I had mono in 6th grade. And then I had a relapse that summer before I went into 7th grade. I slept the entire summer. I should see if I could find a picture, like my 7th grade school picture. I look like a ghost, like a white ghost, because I didn't go outside because I was sleeping the whole time because I had mono. I had really bad pneumonia. I had really bad bronchitis several times, right? Sinus infections all the time. I was on antibiotics a lot. I was sick. I would get sick all the time. For what, right? I didn't eat bad. I was an athlete. And then fast forward through college, it was very similar things. I was sick all the time. I still had cavities. I was still anemic. And my stomach problems got a lot worse, a lot worse. And then I remember my last year in college, I got really deep cystic acne on my chin. Like it hurt. Like I could feel something start and you couldn't even see it on the skin yet. I had cystic acne on my shoulders and my back. Like my bra strap would hurt. And again, all I got told was, well, let's try this. Let's try an antibiotic, which made my stomach even more upset. Or what detergent are you using? And I'm like, I don't understand how it could be detergent because I use the same detergent that I've used forever and it didn't used to bother me. If it was the detergent, wouldn't other skin areas also be irritated? Like I'm wearing the shirt and the pants that are washed in the same soap. Wouldn't there be acne on my legs then as well if it's from the detergent? Like none of it made sense to me. Well, maybe it's your shampoo. And I'm like, okay, but why would my shampoo all of a sudden be causing me acne? And wouldn't I have acne other than just my shoulders? Wouldn't it be all the way down my back, which, it wasn't? Or it would be along my hairline here too, where the shampoo touches also. Like I would have some cystic acne on my forehead if I was getting acne from my shampoo or conditioner or something or soap or whatever. I'm like, I don't understand. None of this makes like what they would say and suggest, which, I get that they're trying to be helpful, but that was their solution was, well, just switch your shampoo. And I was like, but I understand, but this doesn't make sense. Because if it was the shampoo, then everywhere the shampoo touched would be an issue. And that's not the case. So what else do we have? And it wasn't until I started grad school where I started learning more about this. And I came across an article of somebody. She was talking about her experience with gluten. And she literally was telling my life story, how she talked about her stomach issues, everything else. Like it's embarrassing to go to the gym with your friends, to be like, hey, let's go to the gym, let's work out, and then we'll go shower and we'll go get lunch and da 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 da. And you all go to the gym and you're all on the ellipticals together because that's what we used to do all the time. And I couldn't stay on the elliptical for more than 5 minutes without having to run to the bathroom with diarrhea. So I read this article. She said that she had stopped eating wheat. That was the first time I'd ever heard the word celiac as well. I was like, I'm going to try this. I'm just going to try it. I'm so desperate. My stomach hurts so bad. No matter what I do, no matter how much Pepto-Bismol I drink, my stomach still hurts. And I cut out gluten, and within 3 days, my stomach started to feel better. And within a week, I knew I was never going to go back. I mean, it was spans of time, 3 months, 6 months. I could tell things started to shift and change in my body. Things like my nails always used to be brittle and break. My hair, I would always have brittle hair and split ends, and my hair was never shiny, no matter how much Pantene I used. It was like my hair always looked dry, right? My skin was always so dry. I was malnourished. Even though I ate a lot, I was malnourished. I was the classic picture of overfed and undernourished, which a lot of people are. But for me, it was a complete absorption issue. Absorption. And cutting out gluten changed all of that. I stopped being anemic. My hemoglobin jumped from a 9 to a 14 in a matter of weeks. And yes, I had had it tested. Yeah. My nails stopped breaking and chipping and became stronger. My hair stopped breaking. I got thicker hair even. I mean, I don't have really thick hair just genetically, but I was like, wow, oh, that's different. Okay. Yeah. My skin completely changed. The biggest thing though, I stopped getting cavities, but the biggest thing was my stomach. My stomach changed. The amount of diarrhea I had, the gas, the bloating, all that stuff completely changed. That doesn't mean that I don't have issues now. If I've gotten contaminated or gotten gluten now, it does, like, I do have stomach issues. It has happened by accident at restaurants. Um, sometimes I have been served, like I ordered, they had gluten-free pizza on the menu. So I ordered the gluten-free pizza and the waiter accidentally forgot to ring it in, and he brought the pizza to me, and I was like, this is the best gluten-free crust I've ever had. And he was like, oh my God, that's not the gluten-free pizza. And I was like, you're shitting. I'm going to go vomit now. Yeah. I'm going to go throw this up right now. So now I always triple check. So I always ask anybody who's been a server for me, I'm so sorry. If I triple check while I'm ordering the food and I say, like, okay, this is your gluten-free menu. Yep. Okay. I'd like the gluten-free this and the gluten-free this on the side and the gluten-free. I say it like that because it's not because of you. It's because I get really it's nervous. I get nervous. I get nervous about it. It's a risk. It's always a risk getting food. It's always a risk. And then when the food gets delivered and asking if it's gluten-free, or if we order takeout and I go to pick it up and I say, is it gluten-free? Unless it's got some type of food where it's got a sticker on it where it says, gluten-free right on there. I don't trust it unless it's got a sticker, right? Because I've been burned before. So, but it's made all the difference in the world. And I know that a lot of people feel very, very different when they are gluten-free, or limit even the amount of gluten they eat because of the inflammatory factor of it and what it can do to your gut lining, and everything else. So now we're going to get to the fun part. Crazy things that people have said to me because I'm gluten-free. Crazy things. Crazy things. I have had people tell me I'm seeking attention. You're doing that gluten-free fad. Well, at first, because I've been gluten-free since before I even got pregnant with my son, and he's 18 now. So 19, almost 20 years. Almost 20 years I've been gluten-free. That's a really long time. That's a really long time to be gluten-free. And back then, it was not common. People didn't know what that was. So people would be like, what is that? What do you mean gluten-free? What is that? Why can't you eat that? Oh, you have tummy issues? Oh, okay. The buzz around everything at that time was being lactose intolerant. So sometimes I would compare it to that. I'd be like, yeah, it's like lactose intolerant, but for wheat. I can't eat wheat. I can't eat bread. I can't eat, regular stuff. I can have it if it's rice bread, rice flour, something like that. But I've had people tell me that I'm just trying to get food for free, walking into restaurants and saying, like, oh, do you have a gluten-free menu? You have to pay for your food here. Right. No, I got that. I just like, are things listed on your menu gluten-free or no? Um, Requesting gluten-free soy sauce, right? Um, People then asking, "Oh, is this really a food allergy?" Or, and I'd be like, "No, it's an allergy. It's an allergy." Because if I were to touch gluten, is that an allergy? No, but I get so violently ill from it, right? And I understand there's a difference between an anaphylactic allergy, right? So somebody who's allergic to peanuts or allergic to bee stings or something, I don't react like that. But for all intents and purposes, when I go to a restaurant, I do not want to have explosive diarrhea, so I will say it's an allergy. And there are only certain restaurants that I will go to and trust. That's absolutely true. My favorite, in case you're wondering, and again, I'm not connected with them at all. They're called Olivia's Organic Cafe in Burnsville, Minnesota. My favorite. Totally gluten-free facility. 100% gluten-free. And they're delicious. So that's my favorite. If you live in Minnesota, go there because it's incredible. um, Other crazy things people have said, yeah, accusing me of attention seeking, besides people not knowing what gluten is or not understanding what that is, um, and just their weird reactions to it, saying, "Oh, you're just trying to be trendy," and I always say, "No, I'm trying not to have diarrhea." And I've had people that why do you say that? Why do you say something about diarrhea? And I'm like, because it gets people to shut up about what I'm eating. They're not eating it. I'm not asking you to eat it or not to eat it. I'm requesting nothing about you and your food. Now, these are other people that you're like eating with, right? You're out to dinner with people and I ask specific questions about the menu or the food and how it's prepared and everything else, or to ensure that, yes, the salad, please do not put the croutons on it, because if the croutons are on it, I cannot pick them off. I have to have the salad completely remade with zero crumbs. Oh, you can't even eat a crumb? No, I can't eat a crumb. Matt, Stuart, Chad, I can't eat a crumb because then I'm going to have diarrhea. And that's super not fun for me. So I'd rather be a brat at the table and seem really picky, but to be like, listen, I'm so sorry. I will get really ill if I have that. And very rarely does the restaurant have a problem with it. Like, they're usually more than happy to accommodate or understand. It's usually like people that you're with, like, oh, you're trendy. Oh yeah. Oh, does it really matter that much? Yeah, it does. It does. Oh, you just have to, get a special meal. I do. Right. I think it's so weird that people take it so personally when you can or cannot eat stuff. And I have had people just be really weird about the food too, because so much food is gluten free. Like, if you have steak and potatoes and green beans and you don't have gravy or something like that, right? If that's what you eat for dinner, that's gluten free. You bake a potato and maybe you put butter on it or something and green beans, right? That's gluten free, right? And there's so many times people be like, "Well, I don't know what to make you," and I'm like, "Well, there's so much food that's gluten free," or I don't know. I remember like one of the first Thanksgivings that I was gluten free, and it was with my extended family, and they were so nice about it, where they cooked all this food gluten free and put it on like the side table, so it wasn't sharing. Because again, if you're like, "Oh, there's a cheese and cracker tray," but the crackers are like Triscuits and they're right next to the cheese, I'm not going to eat the cheese. Cross-contamination, right? And did you wash your hands in between touching the Triscuits and the cheese and all this other stuff, right? Can't do it. So my extended family, so sweet, made this whole like side table with a gluten-free pumpkin pie, a gluten-free apple pie, like all this stuff with realizing, I was like, yeah, like, it's Thanksgiving. Most of it's gluten-free except for the gravy that you make, because I know you put wheat in it. You could use cornstarch, which is gluten-free, but either way. But like, they wouldn't let anybody else eat the food, and they were like, "This is your food." I was like, "I'm not going to eat two whole pies by myself, you guys. Like, you can have it too." I was like, someone else can eat it too. Because my husband then was like dishing up over there and they were like, no, that's Bethy's food. That's her food. Don't eat it. And I was like, no, other people can eat it. It's regular food. It's regular food. So there was that as well. Um, I have had people accuse me of faking it, like faking gluten stuff, or whatever. But again, I know other people have gotten picked on more than I have with it because I'm like, I wouldn't call myself a confrontational person, but if you're going to say something to me, I'm going to stand my ground and not get pushed around for it. Right. Which is again why I go straight to the diarrhea part, you know? Even if that weren't true, I probably would say it just because it's it's none of their business. It's none of their business. It's not your business what I do or don't eat, right? What do you care? How does that impact you? And why do you have so many feelings about it? And how is this something that is going to make or break your day, what I eat? You know? I have felt bad where people have like brought me gifts or made cookies for the office or something and they're not gluten-free. I don't tell them that, right? Or I have people say things like, "Oh, you can just here, I know these aren't gluten-free, but you can just have one. Just try a bite." No. And I get that there's some pressure like that because it's like there's the pressure of I don't want to hurt your feelings, but the uncomfortableness of hurting your feelings or the awkwardness of that moment is not as bad as the uncomfortableness that I would have later from taking that bite. Yeah. I've gotten in arguments with my husband about stuff around this. And again, not recently. This is like 20 years ago when I was first going gluten free and he saw the price of a gluten free loaf of bread and like, why would you buy this? Or he was like, try this or try this brand of something or it's sprouted wheat or whatever. And I was like, but it's still wheat. I don't want to try it. And he like got, well, I don't know why you're being like this. And I was like, because again, somebody else caring so much about what you're eating or not eating. And, we had to have tough conversations about it where I was like, no, I'm not going to unless I'm 100% sure. Otherwise, it's a waste of money. And I don't want it in the house. And then it became I would buy gluten-free snacks, crackers, pretzels. And they would always come in a smaller box and they would be more expensive, right? And then he would sit down and eat all of my snack. And he'd be like, yeah, those are pretty good. I'm like, stop eating my snacks. Now our whole house is gluten-free. It's different because all our kids are gluten-free. Um, and I made that choice as well on purpose that they're gluten-free because I don't think it's helpful to have gluten in the house. And they also feel better not having gluten. Each of them, when they were little, I specifically introduced them to gluten at different points when they were young and eating foods and saw their negative reactions from it. So I just stopped, right? There is, and I've done genetic testing since then, and I do have a genetic factor that puts me at a higher risk for having celiac, all of that stuff. And I know genetics versus epigenetics, all of the things. But again, with my history of gut issues, antibiotic use, and ibuprofen use, and what it's done to my gut lining. Anyway, one of the things I am looking forward to, though, is going to Italy someday. That's on my bucket list. I do want to go to Europe. I've never been to Europe, and I want to go to Europe, and I want to eat gluten-free things there. And I would try gluten there. Like on my last day. Things I do if I've gotten gluten. Charcoal. I take charcoal. I travel with charcoal. I get an upset stomach anyway if I travel. I have a sensitive stomach. So I travel with charcoal capsules, which have been used historically for digestive issues. Yeah. And then things like peppermint tea can be really helpful too, just to calm your gut. But those couple of things. And then I have some other gut protocol things that I will utilize, but charcoal is the number one go-to I have when I have had gluten. It's what I have found has been the most helpful for me. If I'm wondering if I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know, or my stomach hurts really bad, or I'm super bloated and I have to go to bed. It's not good. Charcoal. And it really helps. So That's my story on gluten. That's my really long story on gluten. Some of the weird things people have said, also some things to be aware of, cross-contamination. But again, there are some people who say, I don't have an issue. I don't have any gut issues. Okay. How's your brain fog? How's your fatigue? How's your skin? How's your hair? I know people that have had their hair fall out. They have no other health issues, but they start going bald. They go gluten-free and their hair is fine. I know people that have zero stomach issues. They just have fatigue and brain fog. They cut gluten and they feel way better. Right? Correlation, causation, blah, 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 blah. They didn't test for it. Listen, some of the tests are still really, really tough. We do GI mapping that tests for an anti-gliadin IgA, which is an immune response to gluten. We also do food sensitivity testing, right? Which is an IgG, I believe. So another immune response to all sorts of gluten, wheat, food sensitivity, right? There's like almost 300 things you're testing for anyway there. But the biggest thing I like to go off for people is, how do you feel? How do you feel? When you make a health change, how does it make you feel? If you start feeling better, you're on the right track. It's as simple as that. If you make a health change and any issue in your body gets worse or new things pop up, take note of that. So, all right, that's what I got for you today. Thank you for being here, for listening. Let me know if you have any other questions. I would also love to hear stories if you have gone gluten-free or had experience with this and people have said things. I want to know about it. Comment below. Send me a message. Send me a story. I love it. I love hearing these because it makes me feel less crazy. Again, and it is so much better now than it used to be 20 years ago. So much better now. But I would love to hear your stories. So, all right. Thanks for being here, you guys, and I will see you later. Thank you for joining me on today's episode. If you would like more information, just head on over to drbethwesty.com for all the show notes and information from today's episode. And if you're looking for more community, more support, you can find and follow me on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and I would love to see you there.